This is the Healthy Business Podcast, the show for ambitious business owners who want to grow and scale in a healthy way. I'm Sarah Cook, and I'll be sharing with you tips, inspiration, and proven methods from leading business experts, entrepreneurs, and health and wellness professionals to help you grow your business with more income and having more impact, but in a way that works for you. Because when you have clarity and strategy, you can achieve the results you want. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Healthy Business Podcast. I am Sarah Cook and I'm super excited. I have a guest with me today. I have James Rodwell, who is an Olympic athlete, winning a silver medal in the Rio Olympics in 2016. He is England's most capped rugby sevens player with 93 World Series tournaments and did hold the record for the world's most capped rugby until recently. He's played in 3 Commonwealth Games, 3 World Cups for the sevens rugby. He's not just been an Olympian from a player perspective, but he's also coached at an Olympics, World Cup and Commonwealth Games. And he also does a lot of coaching support for Vitality as a performance champion. But potentially most importantly, he's also my younger brother. So this is going to be an interesting conversation. And I'm super excited to delve into lots of different areas. So thank you for joining me, James. Super excited.
No, thank you for having me. It's nice to finally get the call up.
I know, after well over 100 episodes that I finally decided to invite you on. Well, you are super busy. I know you have lots of, until recently you were kind of traveling a lot with your rugby and doing lots of different things. And I've been asking my audience kind of different things about what it means to, or what questions I should be asking you as an Olympic athlete, as a sports high performance athlete as well. And, you know, my listeners know that my background is in sport as well. And I think there's so many links between sport and business, and obviously this is much more of a kind of a business focused podcast, but I think it's really interesting to chat to people from different areas within the world as well as also industries, because I think we can learn a lot from different people and different things. So I'm really interested to hear your take on the question that I always ask my guest experts and guest interviewees. So tell me what does a healthy business mean to you?
Yeah, obviously I don't own my own business or anything like that, but when I think of healthy business, I think around the environment that's created. And I suppose if I relate that back to what I created within my sporting environment, and then when I head coach with the women's sevens as well, the environment for me was massive, and create a healthy business, healthy environment for me is all built around the culture. I'm someone who likes or thinks that a healthy environment, a good environment, is all around having an empathetic culture, which gives people the opportunity to thrive, but also makes people care and want to help each other get better as well. So with that is also linked to having a really clear strategy and goals associated it, so everyone can buy into that and almost work together to try and achieve the same things, whether you're starting out your journey or whether you've been there as an experienced person. So it's all around, for me, around the people that you have around you that share the same passion with driving performance and getting the best out of people and results, really. So yeah, healthy business is all about that, all about people and environment.
I love that. And I think it's really important because, you know, whether you're working on your own as a business owner or whether you're part of a team and you're growing your business, or as you're part of a team outside of that environment that is created has such a knock-on effect on so many different things, right? So whether it is from, you know, a mindset perspective, whether it's your habits, as you say, it's the culture, what is important, it helps you kind of get intentional. Take me back to the early days from, you know, I know you started playing sport. We've both started playing sport at a really young age. And I think talking about culture, like, that's really hard to think about as a young sportsman, right? So how did that develop for you as you kind of progressed in your sporting career?
Yeah, I think when you're starting out in anything, it's all very raw and new. So you try and absorb as many things as you possibly can. And I think if we look at it from a sporting context, when you go into a new environment, you want to be a sponge almost. You want to take as much information off people as you can, but you're also looking and seeing how other people interact and react with each other. And I think my view on culture is very much framed from those experiences along the way and what's worked and what hasn't worked. And too often, I think within sport and business, that culture is sort of driven from the top, and you're expected to follow like suit with it, and you don't necessarily buy into it, especially as a younger person. So I think the more you can have people involved in those sort of decisions around creating the culture and the reasons behind it, then you're going to get a lot better buy-in from it. So I think for me, there's loads of times I can think back where values and culture and things were put up on the wall and not necessarily adhered to, or you're expected to follow them, or this is our strap line, this is our culture, this is what we buy into. And yeah, there is a part of that as a new person going into those environments that you have to sort of buy into a culture that is already created if you're new to it. But when you get the opportunity to sort of change or adapt those cultures to be more positive, I think that's where, as you get older and more experienced, you can have those effects. So I guess looking back to right at the beginning, it's almost a bit like a rabbit in headlights. There's so much you're taking in, and I think that's with anything, right? If you're starting a new business or going into a new environment, there's just so many things you can take in. And it's just trying to absorb as much as possible, really, and then trying to pick out the bits that you think are really important and actually that will grow you as a person as well.
And how do you get over that overwhelm? Like, as you say, there's always so many things that are going on, whether you're looking internally and developing yourself, you're constantly learning, that sort of sponge mentality, which is so important. But how do you balance that with what often happens is this kind of fear almost that, are you doing it right? Are you doing it in the expected way? But also the shoulds versus the wants, and also, that kind of bigger piece around overwhelm.
Yeah, I think that's a huge one. And I think it's all about the people you surround yourself with. So if you can get good people around you that you trust, not only will they give you the positive reinforcement that you're doing things right, but also when you're going slightly off track, they'll be able to pick you up as well and sort of help you understand why you need to change certain habits or behaviors. And I think that doesn't just relate to culture, that's with everything, right? With having people that you trust so much, they're not just going to give you yes answers all the time. Am I doing well? Yeah, of course you are. You're doing great. Well, actually, no, you could do better there. Like, it's those people you want that will actually give you honest answers. And they're probably slightly different to sort of just your friendship group. It's actually having the right people and almost like a circle of trust, I suppose. And I was talking to someone about this a little while ago that likened it to the players' box in tennis. So you're the one in the center of the court. You're doing everything you can to perform, but in that box you've got everyone that's around you: your family, your coach, your psychologist, your nutritionist, your strength conditioner, all the people that you've put into your box to make you the best version of yourself. And I thought that's a really good way of sort of seeing it and understanding it. And another way to look at it is almost like your virtual boardroom. Like, who would you have in your boardroom to like make sure that you're making good decisions moving forward? And ultimately there's always going to be someone out there with more experience than you. There's always going to be someone that could give you a different lens on something, to maybe give you a different perspective and change your way of thinking. And I think that's something that I've probably tried to go with as my career sort of progressed, is to almost you're never the finished article. It doesn't matter how many tournaments you've played, how many business meetings you've been in, you can always be better. And as soon as you stop thinking that, then you might as well go and do something else, because you've sort of lost the love to learn.
Yeah, that's really valuable, isn't it? I think just we're all on a journey, and that journey will evolve and will change depending on who is around you. There's so many things that I want to kind of delve off from that, but I think talking about support is so valuable, especially, we're kind of linking this back to business a little bit. And a lot of people are solo business owners, and they get to that point where they want to scale and they want to grow, and they're like, well, I need a team to do this. But I think what's really important is that actually your team doesn't have to be people you employ. Like, if we look at it from a wider perspective of support, as you say, from your perspective, you had the strength conditioning and, your coaching and psychologists and things like that. But, me being on the outsides of that as well, like, I used to come and watch your matches, and we'd have those conversations from a sort of family perspective, a personal perspective. And I think that's also really important, that you recognize the support that you need, but also that can be within your working situation, but also outside of that as well. I mean, you've got a family, you've got 2 young children, and that has to balance as well, right? And I think it's, how do you create that support if you're growing and you're learning constantly? I mean, you would, as part of a team, you had sort of a natural part of the support there, but you probably, I'm guessing, navigated towards certain people within that team, or certain people that you felt like you could trust with, when you're having those wobble moments. How do you create that support? I'm going to call it network, that takes you to that next level, that allows you to be challenged in certain situations. I think that's a really valid point. It's not just people that are yes sayers to you, it's people who are going to challenge you and help you develop further. How do you recognize the type of people that you need as part of that support network?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said right at the beginning, just around when you're going into a new environment, just absorbing everything, and almost you're a pretty good judge of character yourself and who you want to be associated with. Now, that support network can change over time. I think that's really important. I think the biggest thing I learned was you've got to be really vulnerable and open yourself up if you want to get better. Mm-hmm. You've got to understand that you're going to make mistakes, but you don't mean to make mistakes, and that's applicable to everything, right? So if we use sort of clients you work with around like solo businesses, sole traders, individual people who don't necessarily have all those employees to bounce ideas off, how do they find a network that is not just going to give them yes answers? And it's just being vulnerable and saying, look, I know I don't know everything. I've got to try and seek something. Now, I might have a conversation, somebody think, actually, I met this person at this thing. They'd be a really good person to keep a check on. And it's something I suppose from my playing days, when I moved into coaching, I lent on people outside of rugby to try and help me understand how to manage people better. And they're people I've met through rugby, but I trust them to give me an honest answer, that I can be completely open and vulnerable to say, I don't know the answer here. Now, are they going to judge me for that? No, because they're helping me. And if you get the right people that want to help, then you're going to be in a really good place. So I think it's just opening up, like, what areas am I missing? Like, what areas could I be better at? And who can I go and seek that I've met over the years that's doing it quite well in that space? And I think that's something, as I said, you've got to be vulnerable to do that, because I imagine as an individual business owner, it's a lonely place where you're expected to do everything. You've got to do everything, because if you don't, there's no one else to do it. So, and I felt a little bit like that at times when I was head coaching, that if I don't do something, it just won't get done. Now, is that the right thing for me to have felt? Of course it is, because ultimately all the decisions were stopping with me. So I needed to make sure that I'd sort of, one, had the right conversations with people around me, but two, if I needed information, I've got to go and find it. I can't just sit there and go, this isn't working. I've got to go, right, well, who is it that I can go and talk to that because anyone they're not going to start the business without ever speaking to anyone about it first. So I think there's always people you can go and speak to. And I think since finishing with England and the coaching side with them, what I've realized is that the network's massive, and you've just got to reach out and speak to people. And it might not be them that are going to help you, but they'll probably know some people that might be able to help. So you just, as I said, got to be vulnerable and open yourself up to wanting to learn new things.
Yeah. And I think there's always, I always kind of liken it back to kind of growth mindset. And actually, there are going to be challenges and obstacles in whatever you're going to be doing, whether that's personal life, business life, sporting life. There's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be things that we don't know. But going through that sort of fear zone, getting over yourself almost, to then learn more, to reach out, to ask the right questions. I know for me, it's one of the reasons that I run my mastermind, and I have people in there, create that safe space where people can ask those questions, not just from me, but also other people. But it's also why I'm in a mastermind, because I want to be in those different conversations. I want to be challenged and have that as well. And that, for me, is where you grow. That's where you learn. And I think that's very similar from what you just said, especially when you're navigating those changes, like when you left being a player into moving into that coaching space. that's not an easy thing. Like that's all you'd known for years, right? Was playing and being coached. And yes, asking those questions, but actually navigating that shift and being open to making those changes is really important, I think.
Yeah, I think you talking about growth mindset is obviously very applicable within a sporting environment where you're training a lot, but you're only performing a short amount of times throughout the season. And it's the ability to morph between and understand as you as an individual when the right time to be in growth mindset is and when the right time for performance mindset. And can you have both? Of course you can. It's just knowing what state you're in at that time. So if you're in the growth mindset, you've got to open yourself up, say, right, I'm going to make loads of mistakes here, but I'm going to learn from every one of them. Whereas the performance side of things, you're probably not going to push to those sort of complete limits on almost tipping at the tipping point where you're going, right, well, I know what I can do, and I'm going to do this at the very best I can do. And that for me is the performance mindset side of things. Then you go back to the drawing board, right? Did it work? Yes. How do we get even better at that? What do we need to practice? So very simple. I mean, you said at the beginning, there's so many things that transfer over from sport to business. And I think it's amazing how one of them's like outdoors throwing a ball around on the pitch to the sort of how they can be likened to straight away into that business setting. And you see all of the things that can just transfer over and help people really. But ultimately, all of this is just trying to get people to be the best version of themselves. And how do you navigate that? And as I said, if you think you're there, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah. And I think, do you know what? It's really interesting because you talk about like being the best version of yourself. And, obviously you being an Olympian, and I'm super proud that you are. And okay, I played lacrosse, and we've had these separate conversations about the comparisons between, kind of a more of a niche sport and something that is much more on the kind of big stage. One of the things, though, that I think is really important around that performance mindset, as you call it, is the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, the stuff that goes on when people aren't watching. And, we've both had various injuries, and that's a massive hit on mindset. And I want to talk to you about that, because I think the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, as you say, that's kind of almost the growth mindset. What do you do? How do you stay motivated? How do you take those knocks, that analysis piece? How do you utilize that to fuel that higher performance? Because that's the bit that I know that a lot of people do struggle, is that they feel like they need to be on all the time. They feel like they need to, I'll use that sort of business example of kind of being on social media all the time and being constant. And I talk a lot about actually it's being consistent rather than being constant. And I think, I'd love to kind of delve into, how do you keep that motivation? How do you keep that focus? How do you, whether it's routines, rituals, I don't know what that looks like, but tell us a little bit more about the behind the scenes stuff of when you're not on the pitch.
Yeah. I mean, the behind the scenes stuff is the biggest part of everything. And you've reeled off a lot of different things there. And I think that can be quite overwhelming when you say it like that. There's so many parts that make up the whole for performance. And like anything, goal setting, you have to break it down. You can't just go from A to Z without the stepping stones in between. You have to break everything down meticulously and be planned with it. So if we just take one part of that, you touched on analysis, and analysis in sport or business is huge. It's your chance to see if you've performed well or you need improvement in certain areas, your ability to reflect properly and not just go, yeah, that went well, that was all right. So in a sports side of things, we're obviously reviewing training, reviewing matches, previewing opposition, looking at how we can play, what styles work for us and all of that. So if I was just to say to you, watch this match and tell me something, you'd be able to do it. But would you then break it down even further to say, right, well, what tools have I got that will actually counteract that? How do we then practice it in training to make sure that when we see that picture in the game, we're feeling really confident that we can deliver? So there's so many layers even just to analysis that, to actually give yourself a chance to perform. One of the things with analysis is that I liken it to things like exams or even to like battles in war. Like if you don't know what you're coming up against, you're never going to succeed. You might get lucky once in a while, but consistently, you're not going to perform. Whereas if you put the effort in beforehand and you're really prepared and ready to go and you've practiced things and you feel confident, more than likely you're going to have a better chance of getting a successful outcome. Obviously, the other team wants to do well as well, so you can't guarantee it. But all you can do is put the right process in place to give yourself the best chance to perform. And I think with mindset, that's how I look at it. Like every small detail is important. It doesn't matter what it is. It's important. Now, if you get your planning and process done right, that gives you time to breathe. Mm-hmm. So for me, if keeping on the analysis trend, before games or before matches, I would have done the analysis before the weekend got there. And then I'm just refreshing at the weekend.
Yeah.
I'm not going into the game 10 minutes before going, right, I'm just going to watch this team for the first time. I'll just see if I can remember it all. That'd be crazy, right? You'd go and so imagine going into a presentation that for a new client, and someone gave you a slide deck that you'd never seen before and said, right, go and do the best you can do on that. And you'd be like, I have no idea what's coming next.
Yeah.
Like, as I said, you might get it once in a while where you come away happy, but most of the time you're going to be a bit frustrated. So I think it's just having a good plan in place, thinking about things beforehand, what's important and what's not. But the mindset is all around like, what's going to help me get better? And you touched on injuries as well. And I think injuries are obviously something that derail you.
It's the curveball, right?
Yeah. So you think you've got this great plan in place. You've got little steps. The goals are there. You've planned out your season. You've planned out your meetings or social media, whatever it is. And you go, right, but now I've just been derailed. Like, how do I deal with that? Like, initially there'll be an emotional response. You'll be frustrated, you'll be annoyed. Why is it me? Why is this happening to me? And then you go, well, actually, like, let's put this into perspective. I can navigate around this.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, so if I look back to my biggest injuries before Rio, and when I dislocated my kneecap, and I thought that was it, that was my Olympics over. There was no chance that I was going to be back in 4 months to be able to play in the Olympics. And not only that, then compete with the rest of Team GB to like try and get into that selection as well.
Yeah.
So for 36 hours, 48 hours, I was emotional wreck, and I was like, that's gone. It's gone until I sort of slowly put the pieces together and understood what happened to my knee. Speak to the specialist, find out the plan, how I can get back, what the options are, what the rehab looks like. And then it's just about being really diligent with what you're doing. So, if you set a goal in anything, the chance of you going in a straight line from there to there is zero. Like, it's never
just doesn't happen, does it?
It's like the wiggliest line you'll ever see. So, but that's exciting, right? Because actually, you might get closer to your goal, going, well, I can push this a little bit further now because things have gone really well. The steps have been really good, and it's all working better than I thought it was. So let's push the goal a little bit more. On the flip of that, things might have gone really badly, and you might have to adjust the goal slightly, going, well, this is what I really wanted to achieve, but actually the growth there is still massive, so that's all right. So I think it's understanding that it's not a straight line to success. You have to find little angles to be better and keep improving, and understand that those curveballs are going to come at some point, and be ready to say, look, I mean, I use perspective as a huge tool for overcoming adversity. And, if you look at it from a sporting point of view, you go, right, I'm injured, I'm missing this tournament. All right, well, it's rugby at the end of the day. I mean, I'm gutted that I'm missing it, but I know that I'll do my rehab and I'll get to come back and I'll be stronger than I was before. So, like, perspective is huge, right? And
yeah, the reframe is so powerful.
It's massive, because if you flip it to a business point of view, you might be going up, say we were going up against each other to try and get a client. We both want that client. Someone's got to win and someone's got to lose. Now, if I put everything into it and you win, and then I go, well, I'm rubbish, there's no point, I'm never going to do this again. Well, it's like, well, no, hold on a minute. Let's take a step back, put it into perspective. There's a 2-horse race. One of us had to win, one had to lose. What can I learn from that experience that meant that I could do it better next time, or actually how do I reflect appropriately to say, did I miss something? Why was their pitch better than mine? What have they got in their toolbox that I can't offer? Was it just my presentation, or is it actually my product that needs tweaking? So there's loads of ways you can take a step back, and almost that talk about it in sport a little bit, but the ability to take a step back and see the bigger picture is huge. Like, I think when you're in something, it's all encompassing, and it's really difficult to do that. And that's a really powerful tool to say, like, actually, what is the bigger picture? And I think that's the art of coaching, actually, when you see it. Like, it's so easy to follow the ball on the pitch and sort of live it as a fan. But actually, the art is to say, right, for me, there's 7 players on the pitch. One of them's got the ball, or the opposition have got the ball. Who's fatiguing? Who's getting tired? Who looks like they're struggling? What's my next move for substitutions? Like, what's the plan? And I think that bigger picture thing is massive. And I think it's probably even more important when you're on your own in business, because, like, you haven't got anyone to nudge you and say, hold on a minute, have you thought about this? You've got to see everything, but then you've got to be able to zoom in on the right things at the right time as well.
And I think there's so much gold in there, but I think it almost touches back to what we were talking about, of having the right support around you to help you. Like, if you're in that space and you're still in that emotional space, of course, emotions come up. We're humans. We do feel those emotions, and that's okay. But moving through that into what that perspective looks like is really valuable. From I guess, kind of having that, I mean, you touched on it a little bit around the sort of the discipline, like having that personal discipline to not just keep going, but actually to ask those questions, to do the stuff when no one's seeing. How do you, I mean, during your playing days, like, what would be your sort of, I don't want to call it a daily routine or something, but how do you get into that sort of daily motivation? Like, you're a dad, you've got a family, you've got the kids, you're doing drop off. How do you then go from that into effectively running you and getting into that sort of sporting mindset, or just that performance mindset? How do you flip between that? Because I know a lot of people struggle that. And obviously a lot of my listeners are females, they're juggling, they're mums, they're, very similar situation from a family perspective. We do the school drop off, and then it's like, right, okay, business starts. And that transition can feel really hard. We go into procrastination. We do all the chores around the house and all that kind of stuff. How do you get into that space of discipline, the stuff that's intentional, the stuff that really makes a difference?
Yeah, it's a really good one. And I can definitely empathize with the mums out there doing the school run and having to switch to get into work. For me, it's planning, right? It's huge. And there's loads of examples where lack of planning can cause stress. And like, I think the best example I could give is if you're hungry and you go to the supermarket and you haven't planned what you're going to buy, and what you just sort of walk around aimlessly going, well, I fancy a bit of that, and you come home and you're like, I still don't know what I'm going to cook, but I'm really hungry and I need to eat something quickly. So you make bad choices.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've planned ahead and going, right, this is my shopping list, these are my meals I'm going to cook this week, I'm going to go to shop. Not only are you more efficient in the supermarket because you're just getting the things you need, but when you get home, you're going, right, well, now I can cook straight away because I know exactly what I'm doing already. And if you flip that to the school drop off, if you just walk through the door and go, right, laptop on, let's go. Right, I've got a meeting in 5 minutes. Wow, how are you going to perform to your best? It's just impossible. Whereas the night before, you could have just jotted a few things down. Right, I've got a meeting tomorrow at just after drop off. These are my key points. This is what I want to get across. This is what I want to understand from who I'm speaking to. So when you walk through the door, you've probably got time for a coffee before you even have that meeting, and then go, right, well, I'm ready now because I feel confident in what I'm doing. And that's no different to sport, right? Like, yes, you're looking at mental and physical preparation for the session, but I needed to know what the session involved so that I could perform at my best. I wouldn't just run out to the pitch and go, right, what are we doing today? This will be fun. It will be fun because I love training, but I won't get the best out of it for me. Like, I could do a decent job, but it won't be the best I could be. Whereas actually, if I'm thinking about it when I'm doing my stretching and prehab and go, right, the session today is around defense, right? What do I want to work on individually that's going to then help me and the team be better, so that when I go out there, it's already in my head and I'm ready. So I think, like, planning is such a key tool. And I find it amazing actually with people in business that the use of like Outlook calendars, Google Calendar, whatever it is, to plan your day within your work time is huge, right? And you never miss a meeting because it's all in your diary. So the things that are missed are things like your good nutrition, your good food, your sleep, everything like that, which people think they can take for granted. But actually, you need to think about things in advance. Otherwise, you're just going to make poor decisions. Like, you need time to process things. Otherwise, you're just making like gut decisions all the time. And however good your gut feeling is, it's not going to be as good as if you've had time to think of A, B, and C.
Yeah. And do you know what keeps coming up to me when you're talking about that is that self-awareness. Like, what do you need as an individual? Because, you as part of a team, you're going to need, you personally will have needed different things to other people. Your pre-match setup would have been different. Your pre-training setup would have been different. You're all different, not just from a sort of mental perspective, but actually from a physical perspective. You're all different shapes and sizes. You need different things. You've all got different injuries or recovering or whatever. That self-awareness is so important to be able to set yourself up for success, whether that's on a daily basis, whether that's for a launch, whether that is whatever it is. But you talked about nutrition there, and I think it is really important. I think it's one of the biggest things that people miss, especially from a business perspective, is that they are, and maybe from a sport as well, really, is that they're so focused on the results that they want to create that reverse engineering backwards as to how you actually create those results. It's not about the sales. It's not about the clients. Of course it is, but actually to get those, it's all the stuff beforehand. The planning that you were talking about is looking after you as an individual. It's why my book's called Healthy You, Wealthy Business, right? You have to be in the optimal shape, mindset, physical wise, to be able to have that clarity of thought, to be able to plan properly, to be able to create those goals that you want to. How far in advance, like you used to do, I know from the sort of rugby sevens perspective, you'd have pretty much 3 weeks away for tournaments, 3 weeks at home in between for training and stuff. How far in advance would you start that sort of planning prep pre-season, as it were, before because I mean, you played a lot sort of throughout the whole year, but actually the season wasn't the whole year. So how far in advance did you kind of plan for those tournaments, or even just for the season?
Yeah, so we're obviously in professional sport, you get a lot of planning done for you. It allows you to focus solely on what you're there to do, and that's to perform on the pitch. But that doesn't mean that you can't add planning to that. So when I say it's done for you, the things are like your season plan is given to you at the beginning. All the tournaments are laid out on there. Your training weeks are in there, what days you're in, what days are recovery days, all that. So it gives you a framework basically to work to. Yeah. Which is huge. And then you break that down, right? So you go, right, well, obviously I want to get selected for tournaments. Selection happens a week before we go, which generally, but it actually happens probably before that. If you're in a bad place or a good place, you can kind of gauge. There might be a few tight decisions like towards the end, but the coaches generally know where they're at with who they think is going to get selected. So it's about staying consistent throughout the season. But breaking down, when I was talking about planning around training and tournaments, it's, our training sessions would get, could just be coming out like the day before in terms of what we're doing, or we'd know a rough focus of the week of what the themes are and things like that. So you do have to be adaptable to it. But I think once you've got a process in place to plan, it's like you can do it a lot quicker. So for the first, if we stick on the food thing, because I love food, if first time you do a meal plan, or you think about some food you want to cook, it takes you a little bit of a while to either find a recipe or to think about what ingredients you might need for that recipe. But once you've made that meal a few times, you don't need a recipe book. So you start to go, well, now I need this. I just need to check what the quantity is, but I know I need this. So the more practice you get at it, the more efficient you become with it. And actually, it doesn't take very long to plan, and then you can start to tweak things as it becomes important. So obviously certain times of year will have a bigger pinch point. So if we use that like Olympic year as a really good example, we had World Series tournaments, we had 10 of them that season. Then we came together as England, Scotland and Wales for a 10-week training block before selection for the Olympics. So in that 10-week training block, we had 4 tournaments. So you've got, right, I know I need to be playing well on the World Series to have a chance of getting invited to the training squad for the Olympics. That Olympic training squad was 32 people going down to 12 players. So then you go, right, well, now I've made that. I know I need to then be in a good place during that, and who my competition is, and how many people are they likely to select in my position. So I need to be playing well and get selected for those training tournaments within that period. And then I need to make sure that I'm still performing. So what I said about the goals going from A to Z with a straight line, it's not about that. Like, it's picking the points which are important, but then making sure we're consistently performing. You can't always be world class at everything you do on the pitch. You're going to make mistakes, right? But it's how you react. So what you don't want is big dips in form. Like, you want to stay brimming at the top as much as possible.
We don't want the roller coaster.
Yeah, and then peaking at the right times as well. So when you're training, you go through periods of deload, you go through periods of like stress on the body to really like push your limits to get better, that growth mindset. And then when you have the deload, and then you peak back up for the tournament. So there is little dips in there throughout the way, and it's just understanding where you can get your rest and recovery to make sure that you're refocused and ready to go each time. So those 3 weeks away are really intense. Then you come back, you have a week off, recovery, and then you start to get back into training. You start to build back up for the next set of tournaments. So it's just that understanding on what the priority and pinch points are when you're planning, and sort of go, well, I mean, I like to use the example. We looked a lot about switching on and switching off throughout the day and tournament time and throughout the week and everything. And I think this is something, well, mental well-being is huge, right? It's such a big part of sport and business life. If you don't switch off in the day, you're just going to burn yourself out. So the amount, and this is probably one of the challenges of the virtual world now, is that people go back to back on meetings all the time. Yeah. They don't give themselves even 5 minutes to walk away from their laptop and go into a different room and then come back fully refocused. Because imagine in the old days, pre-COVID, where like you wouldn't just sit in a meeting room all day, having people come in and out, and you be the one that doesn't move. That you might move to a different office, a different meeting room, someone else's office, pop back to your desk, go make a cup of tea. All those little breaks in your day allowed your brain just to switch off and refocus for when you start again. And that's the big challenge with virtual calls, is that they overrun slightly and you go, I've got a straight back, I'm letting that person. No one's going to hold you back if you just, right, I've got to go. I need 5 minutes before my next meeting. If we need to do more, we catch up another time. That's like, I think we have to be stricter with what we do as individuals to actually make our performance levels get better.
Yeah,
it's too easy just to roll one into the other and not take those breaks, because you're there sat down, aren't you?
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think that's one of the things that people find, not just within your industry as well, but the ability to switch off, the ability to decompress when there's always something to do. There's always something that you can do to train better, train harder, perform better, learn more, watch something else, read something else. There's always something that we can do to enhance our learning, to do more analysis, whatever that looks like. What do you do to switch off?
Right.
Other than the kind of the practical things of making breaks and having personal boundaries and the meeting side of things, what do you enjoy doing outside of rugby, outside of the kind of your job, I guess?
Yeah, so I'll say coined a term, but I use the term my time.
Yeah.
And for me, that's my break from the norm. Now, the norm is my day-to-day work, my family life. Like, my time needs to be just me, away from that. Now, that could be exercise, could be going for a walk, could be listening to a podcast. It's something that separates me from what I'm doing day to day, to give myself time to be the best I can be, to refocus, refresh, realign myself with what I want to do. Now, it can look a bit selfish at times to say, right, no, I need to go and do this. But well, Amy will tell you, if I'm
this is your wife.
If I don't have this, then I can be grumpy about it, and then I'm not being the best to her or the kids or anything. So actually giving each other that space to do something on their own benefits everybody.
Yeah.
So the golden gem I had when I was playing is, and it's all linked around like the mental side of things and mental well-being, is we had a sports psychologist who was involved with the team for quite a few years building up to Rio. And on my first meeting with her, she said to me, like, how much do you train your brain compared to how much you train your body? And I was like embarrassed because obviously it was zero at that time. Like, obviously I thought about it a little bit, but I didn't really know how the brain works and how powerful it can be in the right and the wrong way.
Mm.
And, obviously in sport, we were doing like 4 rugby sessions a week, skill sessions, 4 weight sessions a week, fitness, all sorts of things. But she just said, like, it doesn't matter how fit you are, how strong you are. If you can't perform under pressure because you don't know how to manage your brain, you might as well go home because you're just being consistent. And that's when we led to understand about switching on and switching off. And, you know, the Sevens tournaments are 3 matches in a day, 6 matches over a weekend. And if you're switched on from 7 a.m. when you wake up because you're ready for the game, till the last game might not be till 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and then you're not going to bed till midnight, 1 o'clock. Like, I guarantee by the 6th game, your performances aren't going to be that great.
Yeah. And you were sharing rooms with people as well, right? So it wasn't even like you could just retreat to your literally your own space.
No, so it's just understanding what switching off means. And it's, for me, it's switching off from the task you're doing at the moment. So that can be as simple as going to make a cup of tea, just walking away from your laptop in your office, your spare room, wherever it may be in the actual office, just going for a walk, like 2-3 minutes, going away from your desk, change of environment, change of setting, change of mindset. And then you come back and you go, well, right, I'm ready. What's the next task? Yeah. And just that little ability to switch off and then switch back on means that your little dips go back up, your dips go back up. And throughout the day, obviously, your energy levels and performance and productivity stays high. There's not sort of huge science to it, but it's just your ability to refresh the mind. And I think probably linked to that, the most underrated part of physical well-being is sleep. And people always say, like, I just don't need 8 hours of sleep a night. And you go, well, okay, right, I understand you can get through the week with less than 8 hours, but how good are you at the weekend when it's your chance to recover and spend time with the family? Like, how good are you at that? Oh no, I'm really tired because I've had a busy week at work. Yeah, you've had a busy week, but if you'd have allowed yourself time to sleep and recover properly, actually, when it's your time to do stuff that you want to do, you've still got some energy. And like, it's mad to think that our body doesn't need to recover, right? It uses however many calories when you're sleeping. Like, that's the body recovering. So if you don't give it a chance to recover, how can you expect to be good at what you're doing and over a long period of time? Yes, you might have the odd time where you have to work at a depleted level, but you can't just catch up all the time, because otherwise you miss out on the fun stuff, right? The stuff, like, you end up just working and being so fully encompassed in that. Why do you work? What motivates you to work? Is it because you want to just work, or is it because you want to do things and provide experiences for other people, like in your family or yourself? And I guarantee it's the latter for most people.
Yeah. And I think especially when you have that choice, and, you know, as business owners, we're in that really fortunate position that we get to choose. Like, you literally get to choose how you run your day, how you run your week. And sometimes that feels quite high pressure that you should be on. That was, for me, it was the biggest learning and the hardest learning, transitioning from a corporate career of fixed time to then running my own business, of being, do you know what? I don't have to sit at a desk from 9 till 5. I don't have to do this. I get to choose. And that was one of the reasons that I left the corporate world, was I didn't want to be tied down to that. I wanted that flexibility, that freedom to choose. And I think it's it's almost stepping into that, being the CEO of your life. Like, how does that work? Like, what gets you to that high performance piece? This isn't about everyone trying to be an Olympic athlete here. This is about, what do you need as an individual to perform at your best? Because that's when your business is going to perform at your best. That's when you're going to perform at your best within your family. And one question I have got for you around that, though, is this feeling of guilt, because you were obviously away a lot and traveling a lot when you were playing rugby, and then to come back into that family situation, that family life. to still need your own time when your kids haven't seen you, your wife hasn't seen you, your family hasn't seen you, your friends haven't seen you. How do you still create that and juggle that feeling of guilt, which I know is something that comes up a lot when I have conversations with people? Okay, so for you to find out more about what James Rodwell thinks about guilt and how he manages that when he is talking about family taking his my time, you're going to have to wait until part 2 of this brilliant podcast recording. Now, there is so much gold just in this half of the recording that we already have, and the second half is still going to live up to the most amazing expectation of what an Olympic athlete can share with you. So I hope you've enjoyed this first half of the interview with James Rodwell, Olympian, but also my younger brother, and found a lot of golden nuggets from listening to us sharing our experiences, but also what is important from high performance habits and really making sure that you're leaning into exactly what you need to create the best version of yourself, which is then going to have a knock-on effect on your business results. So tune in next week when we will be sharing part 2 of this amazing interview. I can't wait to hear what you think of this one. Do leave us a review and let me know any feedback. Drop me a message at Sarah Cook Coaching on Instagram. I would love to hear your thoughts. I will see you on the next episode with James. Thanks for listening to the Healthy Business Podcast. To get your free checklist with 1-minute hacks to accelerate your business and find out more about our community, head to my website, sarahcookmarketing.com/healthy business.